Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasce. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest all the way from Reno, Nevada. Welcome to the show, Garrett Sutton.
Thank you, Victor. Good to be with you.
Great to have you here. Now, Garrett, you're famous for a whole bunch of things. You're very closely associated with the Rich Dad brand as part of the Rich Dad Advisors, and you are the lawyer who is the specialist within that team. Before we dive into some of the details, maybe give a little bit of your backstory, how you got to this point in your journey.
Well, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and went to the University of California at Berkeley, and then across the bay to San Francisco to Hastings Law School, which is the University of California's law school in San Francisco. And I always liked corporate law. It was my favorite topic in law school. And after I got out, I practiced law in the San Francisco Bay Area and Washington, D.C., and just like corporate law. But then, I like skiing, Victor, and I moved up to Reno, Nevada, and it's a great place to set up corporations, as you know. And so I've been practicing in Nevada since 1989. And just as luck would have it, I became associated with Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Advisor Group. And I've been working with Robert for 22 years now, writing books and traveling around the world talking about financial education. So it's been very rewarding.
It's very interesting that every member of the team, every one of the Rich Dad Advisors brings a unique specialty to the table. And what's unique about the way Robert has things set up is it really is a team effort. Often we have a conversation with your accountant and get one set of advice, and then another conversation with an asset protection lawyer who gives you conflicting advice, and so on. How do you pull all that together? It's only by getting everyone at the table at the same time.
I agree with you, Victor. And, Robert and I played team sports, and Robert is a big believer in creating a team. And when you have a team, you have your CPA and your lawyer and the client on the call or in the conference room at the same time. Too often people will say that's a legal issue, go to your attorney, and you bounce back and forth. Just get everybody on the same call or in the same conference room and talk everything through and act as a team. Exactly.
Now, when we met last, we were on the Investor Summit. You led a very interesting workshop, and I put that in the category of experiential learning. And the workshop was essentially a mock trial where you handed us a case, and we had to put together an entire team. We had the plaintiff and the defense and a judge, and basically went through that mock trial. And what was very interesting about that was that of all the different teams that went through this exercise, I can only describe the outcome as random.
That's what happens when you get into the courtroom. You can't predict what will happen. One side has to lose. And that is one of the lessons of that game that we played, which dealt with piercing the corporate veil. So it is an interesting process to realize you can have the best case possible. But if you get in front of the wrong judge or the wrong jury, or the other side has an extremely persuasive attorney, you can lose. So we want to stay out of court. And that's why I've written these books in the Rich Dad Advisor series. We want to use corporations and LLCs that are properly maintained so that we have that protection. And if hopefully we never do go to court, you want to have enough insurance. You want to make sure your entities are current and strong. But if you ever do go to court, you want to have these things set up properly, because who knows what happens in a courtroom.
Absolutely. Another thing that I learned, and I suppose reflecting on it makes sense, perhaps, that in fact the majority of lawsuits don't really require defenses to the outside world, but often are between partners themselves.
That's right. A lot of people will get involved in a situation and emotions run high, and attorneys will, in some cases, magnify that so that they can go to court. Let's face it, attorneys have an economic incentive for you to go to court. You don't want to play that game. You want to be calm. You want to Step back, be the bigger person, and stay out of court. It just is not something that is ever going to be a slam dunk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now you've written a number of books, and you've just come out with a new book. Tell us about that.
Well, my newest Rich Dad Advisor book is called Veil, Not Fail. And it relates to the corporate veil of protection. We don't want it to fail. When we set up a corporation, we charter an entity with the state, be it a corporation, an LLC, or a limited partnership. And the state gives us limited liability protection. They want us to take risks without losing all of our personal assets. So that's why we set these entities up. The governments realize that we want to encourage economic activity, and we want to encourage investment. But the government says, look, if you don't follow these simple rules, once you set up the entity, we can't give you this protection. So there's a veil of protection that you have with a corporation or an LLC. And if someone sues the corporation and there's no money in it and the veil is strong, that's where the case ends. However, if you don't follow these rules, and again, they're pretty simple, but if you don't follow these rules, the veil comes down and the corporation's claim then is asserted against the individual owners, the shareholders or the members of the corporation or LLC. And it's really interesting, Victor, the veil is pierced in half of all cases.
Wow.
50% of the time, people aren't following these simple rules and their personal assets are exposed. So that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, Veil, Not Fail, because piercing the veil is one of the most overlooked facets in all of asset protection.
When you talk about that, what you're really talking about is obeying corporate formalities. So simple things like using your corporate email account and not your personal email account, and not text messaging and things like that, that would keep you separate as an individual from the corporation, rather than commingling everything in a nice big, minestrone.
Well, we don't want the minestrone. We want a separate bank account for the LLC or corporation. You've got to file a separate tax return. When you sign a contract, it needs to be in the name of the corporation or LLC, not your name individually. And these are all these little corporate formalities. You need to have a meeting every year, even for LLCs. And here's the thing, Victor, a lot of people set their entities up online and have no idea that you have these obligations. And so that's another reason I wrote the book, because so many people have just gone online, they set it up, and they don't think about anything else. And there are other requirements that you need to follow.
Is there best practice that you recommend in terms of just operating, how you would maintain these corporate formalities, how you would audit them and make sure that you're staying on the right side of things?
Well, we provide a service where we'll make sure that you have your registered agent in place. That's another corporate formality. We offer a service where we'll do the annual minutes for you, because a lot of people don't like to do them. When you form an entity with us, we give you a book with all the templates. So you can do it yourself, but a lot of people don't. They're just too busy in their business. And so we'll provide the annual minutes for you. So there are best practices. And again, that's why I wrote the book, Veil, Not Fail, so people can understand what they need to do to stay protected. If you've been sued, it's too late to go back and try and correct things. You want to stay current long before you're ever threatened with litigation.
Yeah, otherwise you're essentially cooking the books to try and retrace your steps and put that documentation in place that should have been there all along.
Right.
What are some of the other things that are key in the book that we should be paying attention to?
Well, a lot of the stories in the book, I always tell stories and apply the legal principles to the stories. A lot of the stories in the book are real cases, and some of them are pretty interesting. There was a case in San Francisco where the Communist Party tried to pierce the veil of two private enterprises.
Wow.
And the judge in San Francisco said, sure, Communist Party, take over these companies. And the appellate court said, wait a minute, we got to look at this one. So we have, those types of cases in there. We have cases where the wife hid assets from the husband. And in a separate case, the husband hid assets from the wife. It occurs in family settings. You see this a lot. One of the other things to know, Victor, is we have a whole section on fraudulent transfers. In other words, if you've been sued, you can't transfer assets out of the company so as to avoid them being reached by a creditor. So you have to be aware of the rules as to fraudulent conveyances and transfers.
Absolutely. Well, Garrett, if folks want to connect, if they want to learn more, maybe buy a copy of the book, what's the best way?
Well, to buy a copy of the book, I don't know why, but Amazon sells it cheaper than anyone else. So it's at Amazon. And then if you want to talk to Corporate Direct, our company, we offer a free 15-minute consultation with a paralegal, and we can, see if we can help you. Our fees are very affordable. We'll let you know what the fees are and how we can help you. So, you go to corporatedirect.com and you can schedule a free 15-minute consultation. If you have a corporation that you haven't kept up on and you're not being sued, it's not too late. We have a cleanup service where we can help you. Don't tell your friends or anybody. Just clean up the corporation or LLC so that we can stay current with it and not have the veil be pierced.
Fabulous. Well, Garrett, always great to catch up with you and always learn a ton every time we meet. For the listeners at home, definitely connect with Garrett at corporatedirect.com and take advantage of the wide range of services that they have available and get a copy of Veil Not Fail wherever books are sold. Amazon's a great spot to get it. In the meantime, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow.